Thank you all for joining today. We're so happy that you're here. We're so excited to bring on real teachers from real classrooms in real time for all of you shortly to support our social studies inquiry and practice session. Before we dive in, I'd love to get a quick pulse check in our familiarity of Newsela social studies. So if you could write directly in the chat your familiarity, that would be awesome, just to see where we're all at. If you're new to Newsela, type in a 1. If you've logged in and explored the platform, type in 2. If you've created assignments on Newsela or even Newsela social studies, 3. And if you're a Newsela certified educator, flaunt it in a chat with a 4. Awesome. Thank you all for your participation. It's awesome to see you engaged today. I'm seeing numbers across the board, and you're all in the right place because you're all going to get a chance to hear from 2 amazing educators, and you're going to get to hear their expertise on how they use Newsela social studies in their classrooms. Now, as we're writing our numbers in the chat, just want to make a quick note about the chat. We have awesome chat support here today. So if you do have questions throughout, you're welcome to ask them in the chat. We'll respond to as many as we can, but if we can't get to you right away, or your question requires a more thoughtful answer, we'll also be providing a sheet for you to write in your questions so we can follow up with you later. My name is Cara Gill, and I am a Customer Marketing and Engagement Manager here at Newsela. I'm a former educator myself. I taught 4th grade, and what I know about elementary school teaching is how subjects are really cross-disciplinary. So if you're teaching social studies, it's usually ingrained in Newsela ELA or thinking about other subjects that kind of connect different topics together. So I'm really excited for us to dive into Newsela social studies today. And you're going to get to hear from some teachers who teach in high school as well, but know that the content is relevant for all grade levels. Also, I am a former SPED teacher for those who teach multilingual or special ed. It's important to note that Newsela Social Studies has a lot of different resources and accommodations directly in platform to support all students. Before I pass the baton over to our teachers today, I'm going to go ahead and give a quick overview of Newsela Social Studies. So, on Newsela Social Studies, you'll see relevant and responsive materials to help prepare this next generation of citizens. Right in Newsela, you'll see an extensive library of materials consisting of primary resources, secondary sources. You'll also see articles and even videos, as well as what we'll call collections. Collections are groups of articles, videos, and more together on a certain topic or unit. You'll see state-specific content, and one of our favorite collections here at Newsela is our C3 Inquiry Teachers collection. That's where you can really dive into inquiry, which is one of our focuses of today's session. Also, if you have a curriculum that your school uses, like Geography Alive, HMH for Social Studies, SAVIS, or AP US Government and Politics, we have supplemental resources to support those curriculums directly in Newsela. When you log in to Newsela, you can see your subscriptions on the top right-hand side with your initials. You can search for content by typing in a relevant topic in the search bar and using our filtering system to find relevant content. Directly in an article, you'll see a variety of accommodations and resources, along with scaffolded activities you can build in to support your students. There are social studies specific content as well, and an ability to annotate, which you'll hear more about how teachers are using this in their classrooms shortly. It's a great way to really connect relationship between teacher and student using Newsela social studies, and you get real-time data as well. When you go to assign, you have a few different options. And again, you'll hear from teachers on their preferences, which I think will be helpful as you get started with Newsela or think about how you're going to bring Newsela social studies into your classroom this school year. Also, you can search for content by clicking on social studies on the top bar. Here is where you get a lot of different collections readily available for you. Just click on the left-hand side, inquiry design resources or social studies courses to find these relevant curriculums and collections with resources built out and organized for you. So you can live in a collection for most of the year, as long as you find one that's relevant to what you're teaching. You'll also see relevant resources on the right-hand side. We call these lesson sparks because they spark lesson ideas. And you'll see information directly there to help spark ideas on how to teach Newsela social studies in class. Now, you're going to get a chance to hear from the teachers this idea of inquiry-based learning. You might have heard of that word inquiry a lot and maybe have some familiarity with it. But just in case, inquiry is making sure our students are at the center of our learning experience. And that's why we're bringing teachers on today. So you can hear from them on how they pose, investigate, ask and answer questions in class to build that deeper understanding for their students. Now, when we think about instruction, I feel like we all would know about traditional instruction, more of that lecture kind of environment. But when we're thinking about that deeper, more compelling way of teaching, there are many ways of using Newsela social studies to get there. You can create resources or use resources embedded to compare and contrast. You can utilize multimedia like videos to really build background knowledge and ask questions that provide deeper understandings and thoughtfulness around the text that students are reading. Now, the moment you have all been waiting for is we're going to introduce our teacher speakers. First, you're going to get a chance to hear from Rachel Seeger. She is a social studies teacher, and I'm so excited for you to learn from her expertise in class. Next, you'll hear from Kelly Mahoney. She's a science and inquiry teacher, and what you'll hear from her is really how to connect social studies cross-curricularly with science as an example. So if you're a social studies teacher or you teach another subject area, you're all in the right place and will be able to get some great resources to bring into your school year. I'm going to go ahead and pass the baton over to Rachel so she can better introduce herself and then dive into how she uses Newsela social studies.
Hi, thank you, Cara. So I'm Rachel Seeger, and I teach 7th grade social studies, which is a lot of ancient history and world history. The first thing we're going to touch on today is text sets. So a text set is a collection of articles or videos, primary sources, kind of anything fitting in a specific topic. It comes in really handy. In Newsela, there are text sets made by other teachers. You can look at the topic that you're teaching and you can pick, specific ones from the collections, or you can actually create your own in order to enhance your lesson. And maybe have student choice or have it progress in a certain way. But text sets really open up possibilities for how you bring in articles and engage in a certain topic in your classroom. Now, within the article, they are really great for adding to your lesson, for supplementing, and they have different features that work really well to engage your students. As you can see from the slide, I used it for the Italian Renaissance. The Italian Renaissance was something that had a lot of different things you could dig into. And part of what I used when the articles was the poll at the beginning of the article to kind of see where my students were at before going over that subject matter. And there are quite a few other features that are a great asset to teachers as you assign articles to students. So one of the things that you can use that's already generated for you is AI-powered checks for understanding. So within the article, it will pause the students every so often after maybe a paragraph or a certain topic is done, and they will offer a multiple choice question in order to kind of stop them, rehash over the information, make sure they're good to go before going on. This helps with vocabulary, with understanding the topics, making sure your students are paying attention to what they're reading. It's really great, and it's something that's populated for you, which is really helpful as a teacher. Other things that you can use are annotations. Annotations have two offerings for you. One is you annotating the article. This helps with leaving notes for your students about certain things you really want them to understand about the article. So you have it highlighted, you even have a note. And then you can also use it in order to scaffold for your students. And then it's also there for students to annotate. So if you are wanting them to highlight evidence that they're going to use in writing, if you want them to highlight certain facts or what they find interesting, they have the opportunity to annotate as well. Another AI-powered feature happens before the article. So this is something, again, that's populated for you. You can edit it. You can go in and kind of pick and choose what you want, but it can offer up main ideas, which are nice for students, especially with scaffolding, in order to help them really gain what you want from the articles. That you can also use key terms, so it helps students engage with the vocabulary and understand what they're reading. You can do a before reading activity, so kind of touching on their background knowledge or getting them thinking about the subject matter. And then the last is discussion questions. And discussion questions you can do as a class, you can have it as a prompt. It's really nice to have these things come up in Newsela in these articles to really make it more engaging for students and for them to really dive deep into the material.
Thank you so much, Rachel. It is so awesome to hear from a real teacher in a real classroom again on how you're using an actual Newsela social studies content in class, especially kind of thinking about, using this idea of like AI powered tools and the annotations built in and the right prompts to really paint a strong picture on how you're teaching in class using Newsela social studies. So for those listening today, I feel like something you can take away from this is, okay, I've seen Rachel use Newsela social studies in this variety of ways. I might try this and that as well. So you're inspiring so many today. Thank you so, so much. I'm now really excited to introduce Kelly next. Kelly, again, is our science and inquiry or social studies educator. She'll tell you about some of her favorite Newsela features, introduce herself, and then we'll get to hear on how she uses Newsela social studies cross-curricularly in class.
Thank you, Cara. So my name is Kelly Mahoney. I teach in Pennsylvania. I teach both 9th and 12th grade science, but I've been using Newsela to kind of connect to other curriculums. So the lessons I'm focusing on here, I have been able to connect science and social studies in a few different lessons that I've done. But first, I'm going to talk about how I actually create the lessons. So when I create these, I actually make my own text sets. So I love using text sets in Newsela because I can incorporate not only articles, but also videos. And I've also found some good infographics for some of the topics I've made assignments for. So I go in and I find all of the articles and videos I want first and put them in the order I want my students to go through them. And then I actually go through and create an assignment. So this one was on simple circuits. The assignments, then I put in what standard we're working on, what their learning objective is, and then some instructions on what they're doing in the assignment. For me, I usually leave the level locking off. So in Newsela, you can level lock. If you want them to read the article at the level that it is read, you can lock it. Or you can let them choose if they need something easier. They can put it down to a level that is more for their reading level. And I really like leaving it unlocked for my students because when they're doing these for me, the content is what is important for them, not so much the reading. So they're still reading, but I want them to get the content at their level so that they really understand what we're talking about in class. And then I take these and I use the AI generated writing prompts in each of the articles. I love these because there's usually content-based ones that you can choose from, usually about 4 or 5, depending on the article. And this really helps my students not only understand the content, but make sure that they understood what they read. Because I find that a lot of my students really struggle with, okay, I read the article, but what did it actually teach me? So I use these AI prompts at the end of the articles to make sure that they can go through and use the information they just read to answer a content-based question. Another tool that I use is annotations. So my students are all high school, so I have them doing their own annotations as they read the articles. They have to annotate in blue all of the main ideas as they read through the article. And then in yellow, I have them annotate and write any notes they have. If they're confused, if they really like this section, or if maybe they know more than what the article says and they want to share that later, I have them make a note so that when we do our class discussion, they can go through those annotations and share what they've learned. So how do I take these and make them an actual lesson? So in addition to the stuff in Newsela, I usually create a worksheet that goes with it. Again, at the top, they have instructions, and then I have before you begin questions, which I usually create my own for these just because they're intercurricular. So the Newsela ones are very content specific. So I've made some that are kind of more broad and apply to both science and social studies in these lessons. I have them keep track of any notices and wonders or questions they have. And then at the end, I have them do something that summarizes everything they've learned throughout the lesson. So this one is on war and science. So I have them go through articles from the social studies content on the different types of vehicles and weapons that are used in wars. And then I have them go through forces in science. And at the end, they have to choose either a weaponry or a vehicle and explain the history of it. How has it evolved throughout history? And how does it apply to science? What science was used to improve on the weapon or the vehicle? And then a second one I created is on geography and plate tectonics. So again, I have this resource sheet for them. They do their before beginning questions. They go through all the Newsela assignments. And then at the end, I have them choose one of the continents that they've explored, and they have to explain how plate tectonics could have caused the physical geography they have seen. And then they also have to go and discuss how plate tectonics could change the physical geography in the future.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kelly. I'm just blown away. Something that you had said earlier that really stood out, and I'm sure to many social studies teachers as well, is that social studies is mostly focused on the content, right? And so your use case of Newsela is really encouraging students to focus on deeper comprehension and understanding the content, knowing that science can be brought in cross-curricularly. Of course, they need the literacy aspect as well, but the main focus is really understanding that next level of the social studies content. And I feel like you nailed how you explain how you teach that in class. Also, Kelly mentioned that she uses the annotation feature in a color-coded way. And if for those watching, if you're anything like us, we love color coding things. So it's one really great teacher tip on how to use annotations effectively in class. Thank you so much, Kelly. And thank you also, Rachel, for sharing your expertise of Newsela Social Studies. I'm now really excited to kind of focus on how you can continue exploring on Newsela Social Studies and bring in some new ideas into your classroom this school year. So, Newsela really focuses on supporting that inquiry-based learning that you heard over and over again today. Some of our favorite collections are these, so I highly recommend you clicking on, when you log in, clicking on that Social Studies tab on the right and finding these in courses or inquiry design model resources to find these collections of resources that you can build upon in your teaching. Also, we know this year more than ever, it's so important to fuel our students with curiosity. By thinking about how to incorporate curiosity into the school year and into our teaching, there's ways to kind of use what you've heard from Rachel and Kelly today to expand on this learning. This also ties into inquiry, because to fuel curiosity, you're getting students to really dive into that deeper level of understanding. One way I used this in my classroom in 4th grade was I would showcase a Newsela Social Studies article in class. I would have all of my students look at the picture and make predictions based on the picture and title, what they thought the text was going to be about. Yes, it's an ELA skill, but it also focuses on the content at hand. So by making these predictions, it can really kind of build that deeper content comprehension, like Kelly mentioned. And as you're reading these texts for social studies, pausing, whether it be with guided highlighting, like the teachers mentioned today, where there's questions that populate throughout a text, or if you take a heading, for example, and have students pause, reflect, and predict what will happen next, and then at the end of that paragraph, reflect, was my prediction correct or not, and why? That builds that evidence, going back to the text and finding specific evidence to support or deny a claim. During reading, that's one way, and you can also kind of build upon highlighting those important claims by using the annotation feature that you've heard a few times today. You can even color code them, and that's a great routine to build day 1 of teaching. Okay, maybe day 2, you should get to know your students first, but having different colors represent different ways of engaging in a text is awesome, and you can see how students are engaging by looking at the data as well. You can also use Newsela text to make connections to self, to the world, to other texts that are found. So there are many different ways you can think about how to embed Newsela Social Studies into your classroom. Now, I'm so excited to share with you a brand new feature now available on Newsela. Drum roll, are you ready? We're now introducing AI-powered graphic organizers. To help build that deeper thinking, on an assignment builder, you can now see pre-populated, editable, and downloadable PDFs that you can assign your students, and you can personalize as well. This is an awesome feature I know so many educators are excited about. I'm also extremely excited to introduce Luna. For those who don't know yet, this is our newest AI-powered teaching assistant, available all over Newsela tomorrow. You're going to get a chance to see the cutest astronaut of all time over this platform to support your learning and make life just that little bit easier. Now, as we start to think about next steps and how you can implement what you've heard from Rachel and Kelly today, I'm going to walk through a couple ways to continue your learning with professional development. So, we'd love to continue in keeping the momentum going with our learning and excitement around Newsela Social Studies this school year. So one way to stay engaged is to join our community. So I'll leave this page on for just a moment if you want to scan the QR code. We're always building out our community to engage with other educators like those here today. We highly suggest that you have fun with Newsela Social Studies. From thinking about how Rachel is teaching the Industrial Revolution, our Italian Renaissance, and Kelly thinking about how to connect, science and social studies, that next level. There are so many different ways to use Newsela Social Studies. So it'll be so fun and interesting to hear from you on your takeaways and how you'll use Newsela Social Studies in class too. With having fun, right on the home page of Newsela, when you log in with your school or district credentials, when you scroll down, you'll actually see a monthly reading challenge as well. And it's not just for ELA. There are social studies content areas as well. This is an example from the 1960s. You can just click on the social studies tab, and students can build voice and choice in choosing articles that are relevant to them or they find exciting. And they can earn badges and tokens along the way. Last but not least, to continue your professional development, you can take certifications. So we actually have a brand new social studies foundational certification. It's a bite-sized 30-minute PD where you can learn the ins and outs deeply in the product, as well as get a badge and certification as well. And you can expand with becoming a Newsela certified educator. I know there's a few options, but to narrow it down, have fun and keep the momentum going. We have some upcoming events as well. So if you're interested in sharing events with your colleagues or setting up a professional development with your team, we have these getting started workshops and more here. So you'll see this link in the chat. I highly recommend bookmarking so you can refer back later. Now, we've had a moment to digest a lot of different information, a lot of relevant teacher tips, very practical strategies on how to use Newsela Social Studies in class. I now ask you, to take that moment to reflect. What's one takeaway, or more if you have more, that you can bring into the school year? A takeaway can be a learning that you got from Rachel or Kelly, or something you heard about Newsela Social Studies in general. A learning, something new, something you can't wait to try this school year. Go ahead and write your takeaway in the chat as you reflect. Awesome. Thanks for getting us started. Use the articles to intro and wrap up a unit. I love that. Not only can Newsela Social Studies be the meat of a lesson, it can also, you can use the AI prompts to have those built-in questions that are, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. So you can build in some engagement that way. Yes, the engagement piece is in the articles. I love that as well. So the engagement in the articles, you've seen annotations quite a bit. You've heard about write prompts, and there's 4-question standard aligned quizzes built in to each article. So that can also help with that evidence-based understanding as well. I'm seeing a lot of graphic organizers. I know I touched upon that briefly, but I highly recommend you logging in and going and exploring that right away. Text sets you heard from our teachers today, as well as all of the inquiry-based learning. That's awesome. Encouraging teachers to create text sets to support their core curriculum. That's great. Yeah, there's a lot of autonomy on how to use Newsela in class. And just using the articles and those AI-powered questions that are built in. A lot of great learnings today. Thank you so, so much for joining, and I hope to stay connected. Oh, I'm seeing even more chats. That's great. As we start to wrap up, I know we'll have a lot more reflections. I want to just take a moment to thank our teachers today for joining, Rachel and Kelly. And thank you all for watching and engaging directly with us. We're so, so happy you're here. Hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful start to the school year. Bye, everyone.